The markets dropped almost 5% last Friday, and today we opened green only to drop another 5% and then bounced 3% into close. What is going on with the stock market? That is the question that we're going to be talking about today. We were expecting the volatility to pick up this week, of course, based off of last Friday. The VIX was spiking as well, coming into, of course, that SpaceX IPO. But let's really talk about what was going on with, of course, the markets today. Number one, let's start off here on the weekly time frame. So as you can see, the overall markets is, of course, very bullish. But what happened the past 3 days in specific? We're finally getting that pullback after having that nice push towards the upside. What were the key levels that we have marked out coming into this week? So one of the main key areas that we have marked out was essentially this daily double bottom here on the higher time frame. So if we head on to the NQ chart, you can see this is basically our key level here as well. And we also had another level that we marked out coming to this week. So as you can see, we did quite a bit here on this daily candle. Really, the main objectives that we had was this daily double bottom. Plus, we also had this key level of support that turned into resistance, as you can see. So this daily candle, right, we basically opened up, we end up pushing all the way back towards the downside, and then we ended up having a somewhat of a bearish close, but we end up sweeping out the lows, and we end up basically closing back inside of at least its previous day's range that we had. So price, as I mentioned, opened higher. We end up pushing all the way back towards the downside, sweeping out key levels, buyers stepped in, and then we end up closing red for the day. So as you can see, within one single trading session, we basically rejected off of our kind of higher time frame key levels that I basically had to reject. We had this mini head and shoulders that ended up playing out. Price ended up coming all the way back down in towards that 28,800, taking out those lows. And then now you can see markets are bouncing overall. So the key levels coming into today was our previous day highs. And we also had our previous day lows marked out. One of the game plans coming to yesterday was we're going to be looking for potential longs above our previous day highs for continuation. There was also another possible scenario where we could very much well reject right off of this key pivot high and potentially form some sort of head and shoulders here on the higher time frames. And as you can see, we end up rejecting right off our key level of resistance that turned into support, that now flip back into resistance. And as you can see, we end up rejecting off this level, came all the way back down into that double bottom, took it out, and now you can see we're back inside of the range that we created, at least in the past few sessions. So as you can see right here, today in specific, we did quite a bit. We also filled a couple of gaps here on the higher time frames. So what can we expect moving forward? Number one, the higher time frames here is still very much intact. So if we go into the SPY and Qs, let's remove a couple of the drawings here. We ended up coming back down into that double bottom, and this is the exact level we wanted to see hold on the SPY. We ended up overshooting this level, filled this daily gap that we created, and as you can see, buyers are stepping in, and we're back above this 730 here on the higher time frame. So right now, as you can see, there's a little bit more volatility here in the markets, of course, with the VIX spiking as well. You can see on Friday, we end up having a VIX spike over 20. Today, we end up having another VIX spike as well. So you can see the volatility is definitely increasing here in the markets, which is specifically good for, of course, day trades. If you're swinging, if you have long-term positions, right, there's going to be a little bit more uncertainty. And of course, if you want certainty when you're you want certainty when you're long-term investing, when you're, of course, swing trading as well. So these are the periods where you want to be looking for potential dips if you're interested for continuation back towards the upside, right? Number one thing, of course, in this market is whenever there's a lot of volatility, you have to manage risk properly. If you're day trading, of course, you're not going to be holding overnight positions. But if you're swing trading in these current market environments, the swings you can be going from green on the day all the way down to -5% on the indices themselves, specifically on the Qs, and then bouncing 3%. So think about how big of moves we're getting on the indices themselves. If you're talking about the individual tech names, those are going to move a lot more, especially if the NASDAQ is down 5%. Your individual tech name can easily be down 10, 12% on any of the Mag 7 or any of the semiconductor names. So that's something to keep in mind, specifically if you're swing trading or if you're long-term investing. If you're day trading, you have to understand there's going to be volatility as well, and that you don't want to hold positions for too long, because ultimately, right, you can be up in 1 hour and then down quite a bit in the next with this volatility here in the market. So that being said, let's kind of talk about the game plan moving forward. Right. So what we're going to do is maintain a bullish bias as long as we're above this 730. So this is my key level, as I mentioned. This is the higher low. As I mentioned, we kind of overshot this level, but buyers are stepping in. So we're still fairly bullish here on the SPY, right? What I like to see is as long as you can maintain the 730, this kind of reversal back towards our highs here are in play. I am going to be a little bit more cautious, especially if we start kind of breaking underneath and start closing underneath this 730. Then I'm going to be more kind of weary of the overall market starting to flip, right? Let's say if these EMAs cross here on the daily and we start flipping back underneath the 730, then I'm going to be a little bit more bearish here for a potential even kind of a retest of our 710, or even if it came all the way back down and towards that 700, this would be a good area for the SPY here as well, specifically on the weekly time frame. Right, you can see so far it's all dependent on how this weekly candle ends up closing. If we end up closing bullish, right, next week's candle, we can kind of push back towards the upside here. Of course, if we end up closing bearish, then the next key level support is actually all the way back down in towards that 690 here. But as you can see here for the QQQ, similar thesis, right? If we're looking at this on the weekly time frame, we're still very much bullish. If we're looking at this on the daily, we did end up breaking underneath that 700, but only to be bought up and end up having a candle close back above that 700 level. So right now you can see there's a decent amount of volatility. What I would like to see is a very similar scenario to what happened back from November of last year. When we had this original drop towards the downside, price kind of came back towards the double bottom lows, and you can see kind of defended, and we end up having this V-shaped recovery back towards the upside. What I'd like to see here is something kind of similar play out here on the SPY and Qs. The key level for this to be valid is going to be that double bottom that we talked about earlier. So far, you can see buyers are stepping in. If buyers step in here, maintain above that 700 on the Qs, push back up and towards the all-time high. SPY, similar thesis. Right here is at 730. You want to see that weekly candle close, end up closing above that 730. If we have a weak candle close, that is going to be a completely different scenario. But if buyers can step in this week, then next week's candle, we could see a potential pushback up in towards, of course, that all-time highs. What we do have to mention here now is I do expect a lot more volatility and less of a clear direction, of course, with the SpaceX IPO coming up here as well. But the game plan, at least shorter term, right, if we're looking for day trades, just mark out key levels. In this case, we're just going to have marked out our previous day highs and previous day lows. These levels play out very nicely. So coming into market open, right, make sure to watch the pre-market preps every single morning for updated levels in the updated game plan. Today, we're looking for the break and retest above our previous day highs, or the potential kind of pop and fade rejection for a push down in towards that previous day close. And if we could reject off this level, which is basically the area that we broke down from, which we talked about, we could see a move all the way back down in towards our last week's lows, which is at 700. And the overall markets, we ended up rejecting right off this level very nicely, got underneath that previous day lows. We even had a nice retest underneath previous day lows for a push down in towards that 700 here on the higher time frame. So as I mentioned, the Qs did quite a bit today. We ended up closing, I'd say after all that, we ended up closing slightly bearish underneath our previous day lows, but this was a pretty nice bounce here on the QQQ back inside of kind of close to that Friday's close that we did have. So moving forward, all we're going to do is mark out that previous day highs. mark out that previous day lows. Most likely tomorrow we are going to have some sort of inside bar again, like on Monday, and then potentially we might have a bigger move the day after, and then coming into Friday, of course, with that SpaceX IPO. As for the SPY, the key levels is going to be our 732. This is the level we want to see be defended. If we want to see a push higher, if we break underneath, we can see another push back towards the downside once again. What are some of the main watches that we can be looking for dipping opportunities? Is the same ones that I mentioned yesterday. These ones are still holding up. They presented a few nice buying opportunities today. Intel back down into that 100, nice candle close here on the daily chart. Let's see if we can start pushing back towards the upside. That's only if the overall market wants to flip back bullish here, of course, as well. Marvel came all the way back down. Potential dip add opportunity offer 250. MU, nice hold as well. So a lot of these ones, as you can see, there's a decent amount of volatility, but it's coming back down into that key level that we have marked out. Some buyers are stepping in. So for these tickers, right, I'm still interested in for continuation back towards the upside. Of course, AMD is still very much intact here as well for a pushback towards the upside, as long as you can maintain above that 460. But really the game plan moving forward, at least for day trading wise, we're going to be open to playing both sides. We're going to mark out that previous day highs and of course that previous day lows. If we're talking about swing trading and long-term investing, these are the opportunities that you want to be looking for buying opportunities for a pushback towards the upside, right? We don't want to be buying or investing as the markets are making new all-time highs. We want to be buying on pullbacks. So these are the areas where if you want to be deploying capital for a swing back towards the upside, these are the areas that you should be doing so, right? On dips. You don't want to be buying as it hits all-time highs, as I mentioned, and that's going to be key. So with that being said, I'll keep you guys updated. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoy these type of videos. Make sure to join the pre-market preps, of course, for live market updates right in the morning. That's on my main channel at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, with that being said, I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Peace.